today's a little special training day for me because we got my dog here. We're excited to have Sydney in here. I've asked her to do a training for a while because I've been watching her journey and what she's going through after she left us, right? She's going to tell you her own version of the story, but when she worked for us, she actually created the role. Even though she was doing our property management, she was also doing our marketing. When I started doing trainings and events, she's like, you need help. And so she was helping with our branding, but she was always trying to use our voice. Hey, and always trying to use our voice. And so she went through an interesting transition. She's like, oh, now it's about me. So I have my own version of watching her go through that. So I won't say too much about that, as it may or may not relate to what she's going to be talking about. But I've watched her evolve in this space, right? And who sees her stuff on social media?
Oh, it's so good.
Pretty much everybody, right? So that's why she's here, because figuring out who you are is the first step to branding yourself. Instead of branding yourself, like I think of it in generic terms, like, oh, what colors do I want for my logo? And how do I want my web page to look and stuff like that. That's branding in some people's minds, right? But she's taking this from a much more personal approach. So Sydney, I just have you come up. And we were talking before, she wants this to be conversational too. Feel free to interject, ask questions, participate in this, voice your own struggles maybe with branding, because I know we all got them. Anybody in here got it figured out? Show me your eyes. So awesome, love you. I'm glad you're here, and you're up.
Okay, there's speaker view on this.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. You just go.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you guys are just logging in on Zoom, I'm Sydney Anderson, and yes, I am Jeff and Lynn's daughter. And my journey did start off with branding and marketing with them. So when I first started working for them, I saw these two kick-ass agents, and I came in and I was like, no one even knows you guys are agents. No one even knows how incredible you are and how you built this portfolio. And I kind of unintentionally made it my mission to show people how amazing they were. And then it kind of evolved from there, and we started doing events, and Team Limitless was formed, and we were kind of sidekicks in all of that, and it was really, really fun. And then I made the decision to go independent agent. So I am also a real estate agent like you guys. And more recently, it took me on this path of branding consulting, because I realized when I went off on my own, I had this massive identity crisis. I'm like, what's my voice? Like, who do I want to talk to? Because for so long, all my posts, marketing in general, was through Jeff and Lynn's voice. And in fact, it was actually so invigorating for me and amazing when people would comment like, Jeff, that's awesome, or hey Jeff, could you tell me more? And I'm like, yes, like they think I'm Jeff.
They would come to me and say that, and they thought it was you.
And so I got really, really good at it. And in finding their voice and knowing them, I mean, being their daughter, I was like, and then merging work with everything, I felt like I knew their personalities really well. So I got good at conveying that to others. And then when I started to do it for myself, it was really confusing. And I had this like pause period of discovery. And that's why I'm here today, is because what if marketing was easy? It's just like, oh, that would be so nice, right? And so the way that people think about marketing, I want to change that. Let's see if it's gonna work.
Something like to click on it first.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so I want to start off with an example, and let's use social media. I feel like most of you guys are on Instagram as an example. So you guys want to name some marketing strategies that you hear you need to do in order to be successful on Instagram. What are some of those? Video. Consistency.
Posts. Frequency.
Posts. Frequency. Okay, so I threw up a few also. Yeah, carousels, right? So trending audio, we hear we need to post daily. There's these algorithms, right, that we need to go over, and we need to make sure that we're integrating, and that there's that consistency, right? And what sets in? There's just this overwhelm, because what do we do when we get on Instagram, for example, there's sponsored ads, there's all these videos, there's now accounts telling you how to do content that we're following, and we're watching these videos and we're just like, oh, if I could just dance like that, or if I could just, how do I even put text on a video, right? And our mind just starts into comparison mode. And we all know comparison is the thief of joy, right? And so that kind of leads me into the next part, is I think we all experience this, and I love this quote so much, is that overwhelm creates this paralysis by analysis and this sense of perfectionism that comes from social media. And this quote says that it has killed more dreams than failure ever could. And so that's a cute little picture of me squinting, because it's kind of like we're over analyzing everything and we're looking so close, and we see these, let's say an influencer that we really love, and we almost think we need to do exactly what they're doing in order to be successful. And then all of a sudden there's another influencer, right? And the overwhelm, and we just see all this traction. So I want to give you a different way of thinking about marketing. So I'm going to use a living room as an example. And so when we normally decorate a living room, how does it start? Shelley, you'd be a good one to answer. How do you usually start with decorating a living room?
Well, I guess you have to analyze the room and see what's gonna fit in there first and what pieces of furniture you're gonna need, right?
Right.
So we're.
Yep. And that's a really good point. And so what happens when you find like this one piece, like this one rug or this one chair that
We
will
make everything work around this.
Yes. And you get inspired, right? You get inspired by a certain color that's pulled in the rug, and you add a piece that goes on the wall that ties it in, and you get so much satisfaction from building this living room. But it all starts with inspiration. And so this is where I want to change the way that we think about social media and marketing, because everyone jumps straight into marketing. I've got to do this, I've got to do that. But what if it started with us first? What if it started with who are we and what do we want to do? What kind of a client do we want to attract? Which we hear that a lot, right? But for me, it started with my branding, and it's not what everyone thinks branding is, like the logos and the colors. We all go there. But once we understand that our brand is us, marketing becomes so much easier, because you're able to just be yourself and be okay with being yourself. And so when you lead with inspiration, so an example of this is when you're on the phone with a buyer client, let's say, and they're having a struggle and they're first time home buyer. Do any of you guys start pacing on those conversations and start getting all pumped up? And then when you get off the call and you feel like you turn them around and that they're excited, do you now move forward or get pre-qualified or whatever it is that you get off the phone and you are just on this high? Do any of you guys feel that? That's inspiration. And so if you start to notice that your energy is shifting, so inspiration comes from being in the right energy is what I found. And so when you're in that high energy, and you just got off the phone with the client and you found out that you are saying this one, you're seeing a challenge, like a common challenge, and you start to notice you say this exact thing with all of your buyer clients. And so what better time to turn on a video and do a short clip about that? That's what inspiration feels like, is when you're in that right energy. And so I'm going to do a little exercise with you. So everyone close your eyes. And I want everyone to think of a very specific memory. So it can be work related, it can be personal. And so close your eyes, and I want you to think about this just for a few seconds. And I want you to, okay. Now everyone open your eyes. And what does everyone remember? What pops out to you? I'm gonna pick on someone. I think it's nice. Brondi, what things were coming up for you?
I'm like, I don't know, we're supposed to come up with, but like, my process, but for me, it was like, I don't know, just automatically thinking about my kids. So that's one of the things I'm like, well, I think I can do with my kids and, you know, happy moments. So I don't know. I overanalyze.
No, we all do, so
Yeah.
it's perfect. Okay, Ian,
Childhood memory of going on vacation.
awesome. Okay, anything else about that memory?
Just visuals of it.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna give you a few examples, because I probably could have given you longer. I could have said a few examples of that would have helped you. But this will kind of give you my point. So a small memory that comes to mind for me when I was doing this is a recent closing I had. So I was driving, I got my Starbucks. I was really excited for closing day. I remember looking next to me, having my closing basket and just feeling like I was dancing in the car and we're on our way. And then I remember making sure that I put a little label, because I had these little custom labradorite mushrooms for this client that had a rock garden, like a crystal garden. And it was so unique to her. And I found these mushrooms and I was just so excited. And then I remember getting to the table and I remember just leaning forward and just listening to everything they had to say, and that they were in tears, and they were tears in their eyes because it was our first home purchase. I remember the hugs afterwards. And so here's a little, I happened to document that closing. So I have some visuals, and here's a big memory I thought would be fun, because you all know my dad. And so for my wedding, we actually got to ride a chairlift up together, and he walked down the aisle with me. And then to everyone's surprise, he turned around and he officiated my wedding. And it took him, not even kidding you, over 6 months to compile this perfect ceremony that was so catered to me and my husband. It's to this day like one of my favorite memories of all time. And I just remember feeling like I just was so happy to be standing there with my future husband and my dad, like the two most important men in my life. And my husband gave these vows, I gave vows, and it was this really heightened emotional time. And so in those two stories that you heard, did I ever once tell you one sentence that maybe my dad spoke, or my husband spoke in his vows, or that my clients told me verbatim? What did I express?
Emotion.
We remember what we feel, guys. We don't remember what we hear. And so this is such a big thing for me that I've realized about branding, is that why do we remember what we feel? It's because the energy is felt. And so do you guys remember Tony Child that came in here a couple of weeks ago? He gave this killer presentation. Well, I stole this little graph from him because it resonated with me so much. Because he said we can have this energy and we can have the exact same action. So my little example is just a kick up, and there is some energy with that. But my action in doing the same one, and I have this amazing, like higher energy, you can feel the energy shift, but it's the exact same act. It's the exact same thing. And so my point of that is that energy can convey things that we can't convey with words, but we get so tripped up on the words of everything, and so tripped up of everything being perfect and everything being that paralysis sets in, right? And so, but what if our energy, if we're in our true energy where we're really being ourselves, what if that can convey trust? What if that can convey knowledge, and it can convey expertise and experience and confidence? So my big thing lately has been, I want to rehumanize marketing. I want to put the human back into marketing, and where that comes from is our energy. Because how many times do you guys scroll and you scroll right past something because you can see that someone's copy and pasting someone else's inspiration? They're copy and pasting a little dance that they learned, and their energy isn't heightened maybe, and you just kind of scroll right past it. And so the strategies that are against kind of that status quo of following that checklist is, and I want to point out, and we'll use social media as an example, is, and you guys, we hear this all the time in our industry, especially from Jeff. Jeff preaches this a lot, is value. We want to add value. But what I want to bring up is how hard it is to measure value versus how easy it is to measure the things we do pay attention to in social media. So right now, everyone cares about the views, they care about the shares, they care about the comments. A lot of times, how many times do you guys post something? It gets very little likes, it gets no shares and no comments. And a lot of times that makes people not want to do it again. And then that takes out that consistency portion that we know we have to do, right? It's like beaten into us that we have to do to be successful. Well, if we're able to add value, I want to point out this little yellow box it needs to be a whole slide, but your future client may be silently consuming, and that's a huge thing. I think us real estate agents and people in general forget about, is that how many times do you guys, and I am hoping to see a lot of hands because I do this with Chase and Ashley all the time, and my parents, how many times do you guys laugh out loud at a video that's so hilarious and you share it via text or via messenger, but don't like it, don't share it on your personal page, or don't comment? How many times do you guys do that? Like per day, right? So how many people do you think could be doing that with your stuff? Especially if there's value, if they feel empathy, if they're curious, if they feel like there's relatability and they trust you. Like there's certain people out there that everything they post, no matter what it is, it's just like, oh my gosh, oh, they're so good. They're so good. It's because they've established trust with you, right? And so no matter what they post, you're trusting. And so what else is hard to measure is what if you are motivating or inspiring someone to take action and they didn't like it, they didn't share it, they didn't comment. And so your next deal could be coming from that silent consumer. And that's something I think that is so often forgot about. And the other way I want you to think about this value add also is that when you have that future client or a referral, how many times do you guys get a referral and the first thing you do is Google them for anything, like a landscaper, a sprinkler, like contact, like we Google, right? We look them up. Do you go on their social media and go and like everything? No, it's kind of like a resume in a way. And so even though you don't have a lot of followers and those shares and those comments and those views, people are looking. And when they are getting a referral to use you as a real estate agent, it is important to have a presence. And so your insight, your advice, and your perspective is something I think that is really, really hard for people to share also, because we think about how many people are going to disagree with us. How many people might not agree whatsoever and be mad, but there's all these things, our head starts to play all these scenarios, right? But the only original content when you're scrolling through and you're like, oh, I need to do a post, it needs to be different, or maybe I need to copy someone. The only original content, guys, is your story. So when you are working with a client or you have had an experience, it would be positive or negative, chances are people can relate to your story, but have they lived the same story? Probably not. And so here's another perspective that I really, really love, is that authenticity is a metric, imperfectionism is an advantage, empathy is a sales skill, relatability is a strategy, and trust is revenue. So when it comes to your content, stop trying to make it so remarkable that we do nothing. Just try and be relatable. And so when you start to get, even if it's a story, and I keep using social media and Instagram, there's so many other facets of marketing, but I feel like it's the most relevant with this room. It gets brought up a lot. There's a lot of hurdles that people see with social media. And so, for example, like, how many times do you guys private message someone when they do a story because they're showing their day and their life, and you're like, oh my gosh, I do that too. Like Jessie Tucker is a perfect example of this for anyone with kids, right? Because she's hilarious. I mean, look at I don't know if you guys can hear that on Zoom, but a lot of women in here laugh because they're also mothers. And she's really good at just showing her raw day-to-day. If she's doing a project downstairs and the kids are screaming, she's showing it. She's posting it anyways, right? But we relate to her and we all laugh because we feel like we know her. And I can't even remember the last time I saw her, but I feel like I know what she's doing, right? And that's part of the relatability, is I'm laughing out loud. Like when you can get a message like that, even if she's doing the post and she's sharing that post to her story, how many times do you get private messages over comments? People are scared to comment. They're scared to like, for whatever reason, but then we associate that with we're not successful, right? And so the goal should be to be relatable, not to be remarkable. And so I really love this also, is that good content doesn't mean good editing, and good editing doesn't mean good content. This was a big wake-up call for me, because I thought every time I posted something, it had to be perfectly edited. It had to look like all these killer rock stars that are on social media for me to do anything at all. But then when I decided to just do what worked for me and find apps that worked for me and find a way that I could get into a habit of posting, it didn't matter what my editing was like, because I realized it didn't matter how good my editing was. It mattered the content and the relatability, back to that relatability. So I think the biggest misconception that I kind of alluded to earlier is that everyone thinks we need to jump right into marketing. But I really think that discovering who we are helps us discover who our ideal client is. So how many times do we hear in our industry, you need to find your avatar? Who's your avatar? Who's your ideal client? We need to outline them. Okay, who's your other avatar? And you need to talk to all these specific people. But what are the chances that people who are attracted to you are like you? So if you know who you are and you're putting out real content, real Kaylee, real Debbie, people that are like you are going to be naturally gravitated towards you, and they're going to have that pulling, you're going to have that pulling energy rather than pushing out content that really doesn't interest you. Like, have you guys ever done that? I know I have, where I make a post and I spend all these hours on it because I think it's what someone wants to hear, not because it's something that I've actually experienced and have like real life scenarios where I've encountered something like that. It's a trend, or it's a trended audio or something like that, right? And so I'm here to tell you to just keep it simple. And this is where the B2B and the B2C can come in when you're marketing to a consumer or even to another business, is that we tend to go all over, but when we can narrow our focus on like a singular path and just keep our voice so simple, people can actually have ears and listen to us. And so that's where this book has become like a Bible for me, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. I know Jeff has read it. I'm in my second round of reading it right now. And it says in so many words that if you clarify your message, you have to clarify your message in order for customers to listen, because once they're confused, you lose them. And so here's a quote I did pull. So it says, when we fail to define what a customer wants, we fail to open a story gap. And this goes really, really in depth with comparing your branding to movies. And a lot of you in this room, I've talked to you about this because I'm just like, oh my God, this just makes so much sense. So when you think of like those big box movies like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, all those movies, essentially what this book says is if you don't capture someone in a movie for the first 15 minutes and they don't know who the main character is, and they don't know who and what they're set to accomplish, what will happen if they fail, what will happen if they succeed, and have a guide come into their life, people change the channel. People at a commercial, they go and do something else, they start cleaning the house, they stop watching the movie. And so what I think this book skips over though is finding what we want, like ourselves and who we are first. Because once you're able to identify that, then you can really talk to the consumer, because guys, your best consumer is you. They're exactly like you. So like Jeff, being an investor for many, many years, who started to be gravitated towards him? Investors. I mean, Ian was one of those clients, you know, where he just had that pulling energy because that's what he was attracting, because he found what he wanted. And it wasn't even that intentional. He had other clients too, but the bulk of his clients and return clients and referrals, I mean, still to this day, referrals from his investor clients. And so the confusion is really, really important here, because when we are trying to talk to so many audiences and we're trying to be everything to everyone, that's when people just keep scrolling. And so here's my singular focus. That's another thing this book talks about, is look really close, because when the relatability sets in, that's when people feel seen and they feel heard. And that's all people want. We all want connection, right? Like we're all seeking connection in this world where like when we Google something, we can't even find an answer anymore because there's so many sponsored ads. You have to go a whole page down before you, and then you don't even know if people are posting for views or if they're really posting for the value. You don't know anymore, especially like if you're led down a rabbit hole to YouTube. And then all of a sudden it's like, is this clickbait? Like we don't know anymore. And so that's where the humanizing portion comes. And when we can stay and have that singular focus, this is something that really spurred my passion to start doing the branding consulting that I'm doing, is because I realized, especially working with Jeff, he has this massive vision. I'll use him as an example. And we were doing several events. We were very consistent. We put together things that were really hard to explain. And when they would come to fruition, it was kind of like, wow, how did we do that? And so I started to break that down too. And I'm like, what was the magic that we had there? And I realized it was one-on-one, isolated concentration, and a singular focus. Because what we were able to do for each other was illuminate a single path and go down one path. Where yes, there's this massive fork in the road and there's all these other things we could be working on, but when we just had isolated focus together, we were able to accomplish so much more. And so I started to do branding consulting, and it kind of started to unfold because people were coming to me for advice, like, how are you doing this? What are you doing? And then I would turn it on them and be like, well, what are you doing? And how are you doing it? And then I started to have lunches and I started to have coffee dates and just talk to people about what they're doing. And you know, what's funny is a lot of the times I found out there was a way bigger goal in mind than what they're doing now, and that they want to work towards this and they don't know how. And so it became like really fun for me to kind of like, well, let's stay here because everyone wants to just jump to the end. We want immediate gratification with everything, exactly like marketing, right? We want to just be able to be consistent, just spit it out and just produce. Well, if we are able to have that isolated time, I'm able to help them discover how to express their energy through marketing. And once people feel the energy, then the humanizing aspect of the marketing comes in. And so also with Jeff and the example with Jeff, what I found is what we did for each other was so beautiful and brilliant because it was stuff that was already there for both of us. It was talents he already had, it was talents I already had. But with instilling confidence in each other and having that buddy to just be able to spit thoughts out, spit ideas out, the belief in yourself started to go up, which like when Jeff and I get together, I always leave the office like, okay, let's go. I'm always like dancing because my excitement goes up. I start to feel inspired. Like how many times do you get together with a girlfriend or like a buddy at lunch or whatever, and you guys are leaning across the table and you're just like, you can't stop talking because you're getting inspired. And then when you leave, you feel that momentum. And so, because it's not what we do and it's not the how, which is what we're taught all the time. It's not that how. And once we get in the right energy, people really, really feel us, and the how goes out the window and the inspiration comes in. And the inspiration, guys, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And how many times are you guys told, okay, download this free PDF with this steps 1 through 10. And if you follow this exactly, you will have success. Well, I want to challenge you guys, look at the person next to you, both people next to you, and realize, and in looking at them, you guys haven't lived the same life, right? You haven't endured the same challenges. You haven't endured the same, like the wins. You haven't endured the same story at the same timeline. And so what I'm having so much fun with this consulting is that I don't have a strategy. I don't have a step 1 through 10. It's about feeling in to what that person needs at that time and where they're at in their life. And it starts different with everyone. Like I'm working with someone in insurance right now. I'm working with someone in towing, like all over, not just real estate. And it's just so fun because you get to figure out what's best for them. And the strategy honestly is that there isn't a strategy. And it's really relieving to feel that. And yes, I give homework. And the homework isn't, though it doesn't always conceptualize to like something physical, it can also be like thinking about things differently. So like a challenge I just gave yesterday to a client was, I want you to, on social media, when you're on social media, I want you to start thinking of why you're attracted to certain people. What profiles do you trust? And what profiles do you tend to go and you start looking deeper? What prompts you to actually click on the link in their bio and all these things. And once you start to realize some of those things are things you're attracted to, certain videos you're choosing to watch over others, chances are people that like you will also be attracted to those things. So it's just the realizing what's around us and like the relatability and where that all comes from. And so this is where I am doing discovery calls. So if you guys want to do a discovery call with me, it's a free 1 hour discovery call. And essentially we can either do it in person or we can do it over Zoom, but I'm having so much fun actually just like going to lunch or coffee. And again, that human interaction, that connection that we're missing. And the discovery call basically is us just talking about your business and where you're at. And from there, inspiration starts to come in and ideas start to come in. And it's really, really fun to see where the end of that 1 hour ends up, because by the end of it, usually both of us are doing this. And so I want to give that to people. And so I'm also, my big thing that I'm rolling out right now and I'm doing with a few clients, I only have limited openings right now. We'll have more openings in June and July, is a 12-week program. And so it's a consistent program where you get that one-on-one consulting, but it's hyper-focused on like your business and what you're doing. And if I hear you say something that you're interested in, or I hear a different tonality, I'm going to poke and I'm going to prod and be like, hey, let's take it over here. There's more here to uncover. Or I hear passion here when your business, you haven't been passionate the whole time, but I hear a spark here. And so it's about illuminating that path by just simply like through energy. It's like, and you guys can feel it when you talk with someone that's like in sales. I mean, we're all in sales, right? And they don't really want to be doing what they're doing. We feel that even through the phone, right? How many agents do you call? And it's like, hi, you know, and you instantly are like, oh, they're not. Like, oh no. And so even through a phone across the country, isn't it amazing how we can tell someone's having a good day or a bad day? And so I want to remind all of you, and I want to illuminate what you guys already have, because all of us have unique qualities. We all have talents, but it's really hard for us to believe in ourselves with all of this information that's everywhere and feeling like we're comparing and competing with everyone. And it's honestly exhausting. And then the paralysis sets in, right? And so when you have someone though that's like, okay, slow down. I love this piece. We'll get there later, but let's start with this. And actually, I want you to do homework. It makes you finish this piece so we can move on to this piece. It's amazing what people are able to accomplish. And so my 12-week program, it's $3,500 right now, but this week only for all of you, we're going to do $29.97 if you guys pay in full. And what that looks like is after the discovery call, if you're excited, it's 50% down to hold your spot. And then after our first appointment, because like even my real estate clients, I want to make sure they want to work with me. So if they don't want to work with me, chances are I don't want to work with them, right? And so if it's a good fit, 50% of that $29.97 will be due after the first appointment. And then if you guys want to do installments, there is an option for installments, and then it goes $3,200. And so guys, thank you so much for having me. This has been like a really big passion project for me. And I love that I'm able to actually put it in an organized fashion instead of just on a whim going on to lunch or coffee with a girlfriend or whatever. I love actually being able to be focused and hyper focused on someone and their success, and then make a game plan to move them forward. And it looks different for every single person. But this QR is just to stay connected with me. This just leads to all my information. So my Instagram, all the things. And there's my email, phone number. And so do we have any questions?
No questions?
Oh,
No, I think it's really good too. I got a comment. I think if any of you're like me, sometimes it's like, well, you don't know what to post. You spend too much time thinking about what kind of post should I do, and so you don't do one. Cause it just doesn't lead to anything. What I like about what Sydney's talking about is when you have that inspiration or when you're in your authentic self and you know you have value to add. I liked your example of I got off the phone, it's like, that was a good phone call. I liked we had this conversation about that. Those are moments that should become a shareable, right? You sharing your life with other people are gonna, it's gonna make it so people can find you, that they can relate to you. And when you're authentic, it makes a huge difference because I see, and I can tell when I look at some people's posts that they're trying to be something else. They're pretending. You can just feel it's not authentic, or maybe it's just so static that there's no emotion involved in it. And it's like, well, that was a waste of time,
Yeah.
you know,
And
so.
you feel it.
You
You
do
do.
feel it. So I'm just curious, I mean, if you don't have any questions, well, I'm just curious. If anybody wants to share, what is like your biggest hangout from killing it? Social media, not just social media in general, but marketing and getting who you are out there. What are your hangups?
So. You said it in there, the perfection part, like doing a reel for me. I feel like I have to have it all scripted out perfectly so that when I convey, everybody understands and they like it. Different posts all day long, like information and pictures of things and me. But just doing a reel, just is so intense. It's like, okay, because now I'm gonna like, is it just gonna be one of those reels that just, like I do a video and all you see is the wrong thing?
Well, I think this is what's fun about finding out what Ian wants and like who Ian is, because Ian doesn't have to post reels. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to change too about social media is you are still having so much traction with your trail talks and like the things that you're already doing. And like you said, I can post those things all day long. So post those. And what I wanted to add to what Jeff's saying, and it kind of ties in here, is we all get stuck up on chronological order also, which comes in with the reels, but it also comes in with, I'm gonna post, I first have to post an intro post. I first have to introduce my business and myself because I have a new account and no one knows I'm even an agent. And I have to do this first. And we start to play this game in our heads. And then what happens? Nothing. And so when you just abolish all of that and just say, okay, I'm going on a hike today, and maybe Ian's reel looks like one video of his dog. That's it. I've seen that before and it's great and people love it. People love your dog.
Yeah, that's true.
And you get comments, right? And you get interaction and you get engagement. That's because that's a piece of you. You're showing a piece of you and what's important to you. And I think we all get so hung up, especially like looking at other real estate agents that have like all these crazy, like this crazy.
Looking at your posts.
Process. But I found what works for me, and it was slowly and it was gradual, and I would add in more pieces. But the fun part about that is I had to let go of comparing, well, what is everyone else doing, the trending, like the things I post, they just make me light up. Sometimes I even get teary-eyed with the videos of my girls and stuff. It's just like, it's so much emotion for me. And that's what I want to share, is like, I want people to feel a piece of that. And like I recently did like a camping trip one, and we actually went on a camping trip for a couple that is getting IVF, and it was a fundraiser camping trip. And so I made this video, and my little girl at the very beginning was like, I love you, Kyle and Lexi. And everyone that had been there texted this big group text and said, I'm crying, but it evoked emotion, right? And it showed, and it told a story. Those people, and it's kind of private, so I didn't share all of that because I didn't really want that to be out there, but like everyone that was there like felt emotion, right? And that's like where I come from when I make things. And but that chronological thing can beat us up all day. It can beat us up all day, but instead, and that's what you're doing with your trails, is you're feeling inspired, you're in nature, right? And so you're thinking, and you whip out your phone, and you take a video of you talking to, and you do a great job. But where I think it makes me really sad, and like what I want to point out is that you are doing great. Like you're doing amazing, but the comparison component is what kills the happiness, or it kills and it creates the paralysis, because even though Ian's being really successful, and how many of you guys have seen his trail talks? And how many times do we talk about the trail talks? And we love it, but we all play this. It's not just you. Like I still struggle with this, but it's so much easier when you're overlooking and talking to someone else, right? Like I still have this in my makeup, but that stops us instead of continuing to do something great. So that's my bit to that, is the chronological, throw that out the window, go off inspiration.
Stacy online said, great info, Sydney. I can't wait to have my discovery call with you. Thank you. And then her struggle was not knowing where to start. She's not sure how to brand herself.
Was that before I just answered that question? Because that kind of answers a little bit. And that is too, like with the starting of branding, everyone thinks, right? Like I was saying, it's the colors, it's the logo, it's all those things. But once you feel inspired, those things just come naturally, and you find one piece and it makes another piece make sense, and it naturally unfolds to the point where people are like, how did you do this? And you're literally going to be like, I don't. It just happened because it comes off inspiration, and you can't describe and you can't do a playbook of inspiration, because what's inspiring for Shelly won't necessarily be inspiring for Jeff, right? Everyone's different. And so once you realize that, it just, it's easier.
I think one thing that just popped up for me based off of all of the things that you've been saying is something Lynn and I have been learning. Sometimes we see things such as social media marketing as a threat. Like if something we're looking at saying, I have to do this, I need to do this, or X, Y, and Z. If you can shift your mind just a little bit to see it as a challenge and get really curious about, like you said, going to other accounts, like why do I like this? And so just really getting curious about it and having fun with it and making it playful instead of so serious. I do that. We take everything so serious and then life's not fun.
Well, yeah, that comparison element comes in.
Be playful a little bit.
I'm glad you brought this up though, because I did talk so heavy about Instagram and social media and things, but the clients I'm working with right now don't even have a social presence. And what we're actually focusing on is what's important to their consumers. Like, how can we relate to a human being that's on the other end, like the tow company, for instance. Like you think of people who tow trucks, they have a makeup, right? You can kind of, anyways, and not to get too much in the weeds, but like when you're able to implement marketing that works for you and also conveys your personality, it doesn't always have to be through social media. It's just so prevalent right now. I mean, how many of you guys know real estate agents that are super successful and aren't even on social media? Right? I think we all do. And I mean, even title and even lenders, like our preferred lender, he like freaks out when he sees a camera. Like he just isn't to that point, but he has other strategies, right? And that's where it becomes fun, is that it doesn't always have to look the same for everyone, because what works for Jeff won't necessarily even work for Lynn. So I think we all know that. But it's finding what works, and it looks different. And when you feel that inspiration, it becomes fun instead of a have to, or the challenging aspect of it. Like that's a good way to look at it. But a lot of people, when they see a challenge, they want to back down, right? And so it's all about perspective. And honestly, I think that's what makes it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to continue what you're talking about, because I've had conversations with her about the client's journey that she's taking them on. And a lot of it has to do with that self-awareness and that discovery of the identity and who they are. And from the stories she's told me, the confidence boost of just like defining that and being okay with it, and not saying, I don't need to be like Debbie, you know, I can just be me and do what I do. That's where the inspiration comes from the clients she's told me, as she's already taken them through this. And so I really like starting there. It's like everybody wants to go right to the branding and right to getting those posts done. It's like, oh, slow down. That's why she does this 12-week thing. It's like, let's start here, because that's going to define everything else. And when you're self-aware of who you are and you realize that you do not need to attract everybody, and quite honestly, there's people you don't want to attract, right? And if you're making it to where you are attracting the wrong type of person, it's not going to be the right alignment when you're working with them. It's going to feel weird. But when you have a client that you just click with, or that becomes a friend, because you have some common ground and you're sharing your authentic self. I think that's what I've taken from what she's been doing with these clients, and just the joy of the discovery is making them happy. One of your clients, I think it was actually your first one, she just said, I got every penny of the value out of this from the first meeting. That says a lot.
Well, and to build on that, it turns into so much more than branding consulting. I feel like I'm almost in life coaching in a way too, and like bringing feminine energy into it if I'm working with a woman too, because like sometimes when I'm hearing a story about like their business, I can just hear that there's something that's really bothering them. And sometimes until you move that, you can't move forward. And so it's like, sometimes we have to work through things that have nothing to do with your branding or nothing to do with your marketing. But if you don't move those pieces, you can't ever find that for yourself. And sometimes they're big hurdles, but I've been having fun kind of figuring out what that looks like and giving fun homework, because it's not always has to do anything with branding. Sometimes it's like, you need to deal with this. Let's write this out and let's look at this together. And sometimes just writing something out simply is like, I never said that out loud before. And then when I put it to paper, it's not bothering me anymore. Sometimes it's as simple as that. So.
Anybody on Zoom have anything? Question, comment? Is there anything in the chat, Ash?
I had a comment and it's just about the social media posting. I'm kind of like what Sydney said, I'm kind of private. I don't like to put my personal stuff online, and I way overthink what to put on. The other thing that always plays out in my head, I've worked for companies where it's like people go online and they look at who you are. And so I've always been so nervous about saying anything political, whatever's happening in the social media realm. I don't feel like I can give my opinion. And so I'm just kind of have quieted up on that field. The other thing is every time I got on, somebody's sick, somebody's grandma's dying, and like, I'm like, that's what's happening with me right now. So I'm like, I can't post anything. I don't, yeah, anyway, so I'm just those thoughts and whatever, or that's what's playing out in my head.
Okay, I have a couple of comments back. And hi, Kim, you're so cute. I like forgot you Zoomers around here, so I'm glad you asked a question. Okay, so my first comment would be is that if you do have strong political views and you do have strong opinions on things, chances are you're going to get along with other people that have strong opinions on things. And so we compare ourselves to like societal expectations, right? But how many of you see a political post and they have so many comments and you're just like, oh my gosh. And the people they're attracting by that political share or that comment are agreeing with them, right? Sometimes you get the arguments that's going to happen. But Kim, like if you have strong opinions about something, you might just attract some clients that also agree with you and they want to work with you as your real estate agent or as their real estate agent because you have the same beliefs as them. And so try to think of it that way more so than the controversy, because you're going to get controversy. We're going to get controversy wherever we go. And so if you get a negative comment, I just encourage you to delete it. Don't comment back unless you have something that you think other people would value, like it's like a misconception of your post or something. Like I've gotten comments on my videos before, like I did a post about how grandparents drive by homes all the time and they always, oh, I would have bought 3 of those. Like I hear that all the time from people who are older than me, but they didn't buy 3 of those at the time because it was expensive.
They didn't buy one.
Right, and they didn't buy period, right? But then in hindsight, so I did a post about that because I had to talk with a client. That's actually where I got some inspiration. And I got a comment on there that was like, or people just didn't have money. And I commented back and I said something along the lines of, my posts don't cover every single person. I'm sure there are people out there that just didn't have money, but like, you're going to get controversy. But I also think how you handle the controversy says so much about you. Have you also ever seen those political posts that are very far right, very far left, whatever have you, and they argue on them? And it's like, why did you share it then? If you're just, like you're going to get this, right? And so I think it shows also, Kim, if you want to share something that's out there, it can also be a show to your character of how you respond to some controversy. And so, but the people that agree with you are gonna love you even more. And just be you. Don't worry about what people are gonna think. And what was your last question? Because I had something to say off of that. Do you remember?
No, sorry.
Anyone remember? What she said
Oh,
last?
everybody being sick all the time. That was the other one.
Oh.
Like everybody's dying, somebody's sick. I mean, there's always woe is me, and I'm like, oh, I do not want to add to that.
Yes, and okay, I have a suggestion here. I started implementing this actually because Kitty on our team suggested this. Because another thing I suggest that's kind of unrelated, but it will tie in, is that if you guys are investing in something like the branding consulting or like a life coach or like something that's going to lead you down a certain path, I encourage you to try to follow singular mentors at one time and get through a program. And yes, you can kind of listen, but I mean, for instance, when I was doing my life coaching program, I was getting so overwhelmed by the other mentors that I followed, like Tony Robbins and like all these other people. There's so many people to listen to out there and everyone has their own style. And then there's WhatsApp front agents that I really want to read all the posts on. And like, I was getting everywhere, right? So social media came when I'd get on there, I'd be like so overwhelmed. So I actually brought this up on my life coaching call, and Kitty said something that's always stuck with me. She said, I tell myself when I get on social media, I am going to see what I'm supposed to see. And if it doesn't serve me, I'm going to scroll right past it. And that has helped me so much, because sometimes if you ever get on and you're like, you're scrolling and you're like, oh my gosh, why am I even on here? And then you just stop on a post and you don't even know why. And you read it and you're like, I'm so happy I saw that. Oh my gosh, I forgot this person got married. I need to reach out to something like that, right? That's inspiration also. And so when you just follow Kim, like if you get on there and you tell yourself, like, I'm going to see what I'm supposed to see today, because we all want to keep up with people we love. That's why we like social media. Like that's where it started, right? And now we have to sit through all this bull and all these ads and all these things. But if you just tell yourself that, it relieved so much for me that even like I didn't necessarily unfollow all the mentors. I just simply told myself that. And now I see like WhatsApp front posts that are really relevant for current buyer or current seller. And I'm like, thank you. But it's kind of like that, just feeling inspired to read something and going with it, and not feeling like you have to read every single thing and that you have to pay attention to everything when you get on.
So Kim, I would add to that too. You mentioned not making a certain type of a post because of a perception that you're getting from other people's posts. I mean, you've got a life journey you're going on right now. So most of you in here know Kim, she's been going through chemo and dealing with some cancer and stuff, and that's what she's talking about. But what you're doing is you're talking yourself out of making a post that you were probably inspired to make.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you're saying, well, I don't want people to think X of that post, so I'm just not going to do it. But the intention was probably real and authentic in the first place, and then you talk yourself out of it. So it's the overthinking Sydney was talking about. I think you might be overthinking that, and you want to share your journey to inspire somebody, not to convey woe is me, because I know you, and that's why you're talking yourself out of it. You're not looking for pity, but you're looking to inspire somebody that they can get through shit. So yeah, don't overthink it too much.
I have a question, Ian.
It was kind of along those lines of scrolling, and I found that there's this feature that you can mute posts. Doesn't mean you delete them or anything, but they mute for a while. And then I can kind of focus more on
You can
things
also,
I'm not interested
you
in.
can also unfollow people, like let's say that they're family, but you don't want to unfriend them. You can also unfollow people too, because I mean, and that's such good proof too, the energy's real, because how many times are there certain people that you see and without even reading a word, without even doing anything but glancing at it, you're just like, yeah. So people can put off that energy too.
I'll share something. So I think one thing you hit on, like, who is your target audience? And I think establishing that is a really big deal, because for me, I was actually personally confused who I was marketing to. And so I was like throwing out all kinds of things, and it was just, I couldn't get this traction because I was confusing myself. which means I was confusing the consumer. And so once I like figured out, like, I still want to do these things here, but this is who I'm focusing on in my marketing. It makes things so much easier when you can establish exactly who you're talking to, because otherwise you're confusing yourself and it's unnecessary pain.
And for you guys on Zoom, did you guys hear that okay?
I heard it and it makes total sense. But I want to ask a question more about the logistics. Like what kind of camera you have, what kind of, like, how do you set this up? And do you have to always,
I'm thinking about releasing something on this because I have so many DIY tips that, and I think that's back to like the content and the editing, like good editing doesn't necessarily mean good content. I don't use anything professional. I use my cell phone only. That's all I use. And people get really confused when I say that. And I was laughing really hard because Maylee that used to be with us, she has like all the equipment and all this setup, and she commented on one of my videos and said, what camera are you using? I need to know this. And it was my phone. And it's just little tricks I've learned over time. And I've been thinking about producing something that's like free. Like I'll give you one right now, like a huge tip for lighting. Lighting makes the biggest difference for any sort of a video. Is tip number one, always make sure you're wiping your screen, your lens. I'm not kidding you. This makes the biggest difference. And like, if you ever get like a haze on your videos, or like, you're like, why is hers so crisp and mine isn't? Lynn, she always said that. It's because before I take any photo or any video, I always wipe my lens, even from putting it in my pocket. Dust gets on it, things like that. So tip number one. Tip number two with lighting is, on my Zoom calls, I have this window I sit in front of, and it's always open, and I know this window always has even light and things, and people always ask what ring light I'm using, and I'm in front of a window just like this. You can, oh, it's this, like this. But if you were to film, like look at my lighting now. Can you guys see that up there? Can I move this?
Yeah.
Am I gonna like cause problems?
Probably. What do you want to do with it?
I want to go in front of the window. So like what a huge difference it makes. Because when I was doing like my lender and title collaboration videos, I would give them, let's see if I can do this. So
We're moving the whole setup here. I got you. Thanks, Kaylee.
this hint, if you guys can see up on that screen, this hint, look at that. Hi, hello, everybody. And it looks like a ring light, and it's so funny. People think they need, before they can start video or before they can start anything, they need this whole setup. They need a nice camera, a nice ring light. They need a remote control that starts and turns off the ring light or turns it up or whatever. And I don't have any of those fancy things. And just a simple window. And that's also why I film in my car all the time, is because it's always good lighting. And depending on the way I drive, I won't film because you have harsh shadows and things. But like, I don't have anything fancy, and there's so many ways, guys. And when I work with people, I share all these little tips that it just makes things so much easier than us having to compile in like that perfectionism thing of being perfect, and then we don't even start. And so there's little tricks that you guys can use that will help, and it will make you guys look like you have professional equipment.
Oh, I have one question really quick. Oh, can you hear me?
You're cutting out a little bit.
Oh, is this a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I've watched a ton of your videos. You're great. You're amazing. So my question is, is how do you get the text to speak on your videos? I have been trying so hard to find where you do it, or like, you know what I mean? I can't find it anywhere. And I don't know if it's a setting or what, but I cannot find it for the life of me.
The simplest form of this that I use, well, I use an actual app that's called, I think it's not Kappa. It's just called Captions. I'll show you what it looks like. So, oh my gosh, can you see this at all? That
Yes.
one? with the little white thing. So I use that, but a simpler form of that, if you guys are doing shorter form videos, or if you're saying one sentence and cutting, is Instagram. Guys, I film everything in Instagram. This is another huge tip, is when you film on your front camera, if you're ever wearing a text shirt, you'll notice that it's the right way. If you film on Instagram, it's backwards. We like to see ourselves backwards because we're used to seeing ourselves backwards. So that's why when we film in our camera roll, a lot of us women are like, ew, because this eye is bigger than this eye, and it's usually on this side. That's me. And I'm like, I look different. And I figured it out that Instagram films and it doesn't flip your image. So I film 100% of my videos, most of them, I would say like 90% of my videos in Instagram, and I save it because I can also put the hands-free setting on there, the little arrow that says hands-free, and it times me. So I go faster. And then to your caption comment, you can add captions, and it's actually really accurate. And this captions app that I found is one of the most accurate ones I could find, because I kind of mumble a little bit when I talk. And so some of the things that my captions that I was saying were really embarrassing, but that one's pretty accurate. And then, but Instagram's really accurate. So if you're doing short form that's less than a minute in Instagram, if you search Bonnie, sometimes you have to search it because it's not readily like visible. You just search captions and you can adjust the captions and you can edit them, and then you just save your Instagram video. It's in the correct format for a reel. So that's like one of my biggest trade secrets is Instagram, just filming within Instagram, and then you don't have to deal with changing the size, changing this, changing that, all those things. So
Gotcha.
I'll add
Thank
one more.
you.
So about, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, I was one of those coffee shop meetings with Brittany. And we both came out of there dancing. And I think we were even in my car and rolled down the window because we were still talking like through our cars. And we didn't want to leave, but we had to leave. And she really just points back to, who are you? Who is your authentic self? Because that's what's going to make you happy and want to work and want to serve people. And who is your person that you're serving? You'll know that by knowing yourself. And if a logo and colors is important to you, by the end of that 12 weeks, by golly, we're going to get to the logo and colors. And yes, like whatever you want and need, like she will be the guide for you. And you're amazing.
Well, and yeah, and I do think that's where this presentation comes from, is I think that step is skipped.
Yeah.
Like I think everyone, and that's how everyone gets the views, right? It's like, this is how you market, this is how you brand, this is how you do it. And everyone's stuck here like, but I don't know who I am. Like exactly what Shayna was saying, if you guys were able to hear that comment, exactly what I went through individually. I mean, when Jeff and I were doing our events, if you guys remember, we were literally branding each individual event and making new logos and making new colors, and we had different audiences, and it got me into that brain so much because we were producing an event every single month and we were skipping holidays. And I was going, and I had 2 jobs, guys. I was a real estate agent and worked for my parents at the same time. And so I had to get really good at analyzing what worked and how to do it quickly. And so that really helped. And then when I went off on my own, that identity crisis set in, because I'm like, well, I know how to do events. I know how to talk like my parents, but like, what about for me? So.
Well, to go along with that too, like you mentioned, likes, comments, shares, all those things, like you get so caught up in that, it can really ruin your excitement for what you're doing. And so like I made this reel yesterday, and it was like a video, I tied it to real estate. It was a video of my son just kind of back and forth, like heading a soccer ball, things like that. I personally thought it was genius. I loved it. My kids were like, I don't get it. And no one like really liked it, but I was like, but I did.
But this is where it starts though, Shayna, is you do one post and you pay attention to what you like and the editing style that you like.
Yeah.
And that's what's important, is you will get traction because that video probably taught you something. Oh, maybe it's a style that you like, or maybe it's incorporating your kids that just lights you up. That lights me up. And you start to who private messages you more, who texts you more. I mean, when I worked for Jeff and Lynn, you guys would be like flabbergasted at the amount of people who did not follow us, like a single thing, share a single thing that would go off about their events. And we were like, what? Like, how did, what? And that was where it really started for me, of that realization of like, holy crap, people are watching. Like, people watch. They don't necessarily act like they're consuming, but they do.
Well, so I've noticed with some of my posts, I do get random people that I don't really know, like see me in person. And it's like they know
Yes.
who I am, because they just, or what I want them to know who I am,
Yeah.
And it's just, and I do the same thing with people I don't even know. Some of the people I follow, like Philip Flip, I feel like I know the guy.
Yeah. Right.
And he's always flipping houses and he's got a great attitude. I'm like, man, I know that guy.
Right. And if you were to see it, you would probably know exactly.
I
what
feel like
you're
I'm part of his life.
Yeah, see, and that's what we want, and we want that, the relatability, guys, not the remarkable video, not the remarkable story, it's the, oh, my son plays soccer too, and he does that, and oh, well, that's a good tip on real estate, that's what we want.
Actually, a really great DIY guy.
Yeah.
Except I get tired of him because he's too polished. I'm like,
I see.
he's really live.
Well, we have Rumby in here, and I want to introduce the sponsor. Do you want to talk to you? Okay. But his name's Edgar. So I met him in a program that we did together not too long ago. And I just really clicked with him on the last day, which is really funny, but we didn't really interact too much except for here, scoot over the cat. But he's local here. What area are you in?
So right now I'm in Tel Aviv area. Lived there for all my life. I'm probably gonna be there forever. Yeah, for life.
My sister.
So what we do is like, I have a company, it's MVP Construction, and it's a masonry, and we specialize in brick, block, stone, you name it. We all kinds of custom, we do this. Easiest way to put it is, you dream it, we build it. So that's done it for many years, and we strive to just best work in the Utah.
And I want to talk you up, because the reason I asked him to come in here today is because on that last day, we hadn't talked much. This is like a 6-day immersive program. I want to ask you about kidney. And it was really crazy, and we didn't have much interaction, but at the end, I found out what he did and the way he talked about his trade. I'm like, we do not hear tradesmen talk the way you do anymore. And I just built a custom home, and it's really hard to find people who will really listen to what you need and what you want, and actually have a vision. So like when it comes to trades, like Jeff and I talk about this all the time, is we're visionaries, right? We're like that brick back there. You guys can't see it on Zoom, but we mixed, and I'm sorry I'm mentioning this, don't do this. Mixed brick. And Jeff and I were like, oh my gosh, we see it, this is beautiful. And we often get comments like, I've never seen it done before. Like, I've never done that before. And I don't know, just dealing with trades and dealing with personalities, it's really hard to come across someone like Edgar that he really loves what he does, and he loves seeing that finished product.
Yes, I do. That's honestly my biggest reward. I always said it, is seeing my customer happy. It's like seeing their smile, their joy, just that bright light that they have. It brings me a lot more than money or anything else.
Yeah, so I wanted to introduce him to you guys. This is a room full of real estate agents that need good tradesmen.
Yeah.
So do you travel often?
I travel out of state. I would go anywhere.
What's the name of your company?
MVP Construction.
And say your phone number.
So it's 801.
Let me put it in the chat really quick. MVP.
You ready?
Yeah, maybe phone number and an email.
801.
801 651 6782. Email, easiest way is just contact me directly. It's Edgar MSK@gmail.com. My business is just a business email. It's kind of crazy. I need to get it in order for it.
Email one more time.
Edgar MSK1 at
gmail.com. Yes, correct. So we, like I said, we do everything like from restoring, redoing. We've worked on houses that were over 100 years old and we made it look like original.
Nice.
So, and like I said, anything, you dream it, we'll build it.
You know, Instagram.
I don't, I'm actually working on that. So I never, for a long time, I was stuck on I have reference from builders, a lot of builders. I was like, well, why do I need internet? But after BU kind of opened my mind, like, you know what?
That's
I
probably.
should, yeah, it did. I was like, you know what, I need to do more stuff, not just go based off this. There's a lot I can offer.
Well, Sydney mentioned that earlier, it's like if somebody refers you, they're gonna go try and find you.
Yeah.
And if they can't find you, so it's not necessarily always posting stuff to create instant engagement, it's a calling card that's left there for people.
And I do want to speak on that also, how I mentioned earlier, like how many successful real estate agents or people in the business that we know that don't have social media. It's because they're referral based. They don't necessarily need to do that. So there is a mix, like maybe his tactic is other forms of marketing. It's whatever he's comfortable with, but I want to mention that because Jeff and Lynn were 100% referral when I was working with them. And I was like, can you imagine what would happen if people knew who they were?
That's true.
But I just wanted to mention that because I think you can find success without having to have like a social presence, but I think it will only elevate like what you already have going on.
Edgar, is it stone, brick, concrete?
Block, we work a lot with block. I've done a lot of forms for landscapers that do pools. So there was one house that we did the whole barbecue area. The waterfall had a fire pit in the back for the jacuzzi.
Behind the waterfall?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Like, I have a lot of ideas. We do, me and my dad, we're partners. We just been in the industry and just been dealing with a lot of customer work that we just know our stuff. So
Nice. Super good. Well, thanks for coming in. All right, yeah, that's a wrap. Thanks, guys, for sticking around on Zoom. Good seeing you all. We're gonna stick around here and have some lunch. Thanks to Andrew. Thanks for bringing lunch in. Appreciate that. Reach out to Sydney. Do you put your phone number and email in there too? Okay. For those that are still on. Or you have that slide up for a long time.
That's okay.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's probably got it.
Yeah. Well, it will live on recording. So, thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Whenever you need something, ideas.
Do you have